Hello, everybody, and welcome to this second podcast on leadership thresholds. I'm Andrew White, CEO of Transcend Space, and I'm here today with
Andy Rumbles. I am the founder of Arc Consulting and privileged to be a partner in Transcend Space.
So we're back talking about all things thresholds. As we said last time, we're each going to take turns introducing a different story that we've picked up from the media. So this week, Andy's had his head in websites looking for the interesting story that we're going to talk about. So Andy, what have you found? What do you want to kind of bring to our listeners? And what are we going to try and dissect today?
Perfect. Well, last time you brought the story of BP and then you challenged me, find something as good. So I'm going to up the game. I'm going to bring two stories today just to add to the challenge. You know, I see your story and I raise you too. So last time we were talking a lot about a company in a moment, and we explored a number of thresholds. But today I thought what we would do is focus in more on a singular threshold, namely the strategy threshold. And I guess there's a temptation to think about a threshold as kind of like a uniform thing, but within every threshold there are different dimensions, and some aspects of a threshold crossing are very technical, and some things are much more human in nature. And what I've found is a couple of stories that I think kind of illustrate both sides of that case. So we're going to talk firstly about Intel, and that's a fascinating company that has gone through a bit of a technical threshold journey, and then we'll come on to Nike and its more human story. So I thought I'd start by just kind of foregrounding both of those stories, if that's okay, and then we can sort of have a bit of a chat about them. And I made some notes just to make sure I got it right. So I think really interesting, about 2 years ago, if you look at Intel, it was almost like, is this the moment of its extinction? You know, it has given up its leadership to, its rival AMD, and the sort of Taiwan semiconductor company were taking the lead on all things kind of chip manufacturing. It felt like it had missed the AI GPU kind of mass AI investment, and people were kind of questioning whether this entity was still relevant. And then in steps, in sort of early 2025, new CEO Lip-Bu Tan to take the helm. A job, by the way, his friends told him not to take. It was that level of kind of poison chalice kind of thing. Why would you want, you're a success story, why would you want to take this on? And within a year, he's cut 20% of the workforce, he's halved the management layers, and he's gone face to face with Donald Trump, who's challenged him saying, you're the wrong person, you're too close to China, and walked out of the meeting with the US government investing a 10% stake in the business. Moreover, like just a few weeks ago, he stands up and goes, this is a fundamentally different company today. So within a year, share price is up nearly 25%. He has transformed that company. So that's the first threshold we're going to talk about. And, and particularly like, how did he achieve this? And then the second one is Nike, which is a very different story. So Nike, their prior CEO, John Donahoe, was removed, and a prior long-termer, Elliot Hill, was brought back in. 32 years he gave to that business, and he went into retirement and he came back to save it. And he stood up the other day, again, after another brutal kind of earnings call, saying, I'm so tired, and I know you are too, of talking about fixing the business. And he led with a very deep, empathetic story, and for the first time kind of named in the room what everybody was feeling. But I guess there's a really interesting question here about, because you've become aware of a threshold, does that mean that you've crossed it? So those are the two stories that I would like us to explore, if that's okay with you, my friend.
Yeah,
Go for it.
Well, as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, what is it that these two leaders have done in a similar way, right? They've done things differently from what you've described. One was very much about almost saying, I see what you're going through. I'm going through something similar, and bringing a vulnerability to that. Another was like a technical rebuilding of a really different company. But the upshot was, I think both of them were confidence builders, right? And there's a lot of research. If people are confident in their future, they're more motivated, they're happier, they're going to have more energy. So there's something about what is the role of a CEO in giving people back a sense of confidence, giving people back a sense of belief. Um,
Yeah.
and I think there's two bits to that. One is that you've got to take them with you emotionally, right? The second is, but that's not good enough, right? Because at the end of the day, it can just be, well, it can end up being cynicism and waffle. You've got to prove it. You've got to show it. You've got to give it with facts. And in a business like Intel, this is technical, right? This requires a technical re-engineering. It requires a market focus. It requires the stock market to believe, stakeholders to believe. So when you wrap it all together, what are these people doing? They're bringing back a sense of belief and confidence. We have a future. We have something that we want to be part of. And there's as we talk about in the book, there's a magnetism to that. Yes, there's about a letting go and a shedding, right? You got to lose jobs, but there's also a magnetism because people want to be part of something that's got a future, that's got some confidence about it. Yeah, so that was what resonated to me. As you were talking about the two of them.
Interesting. Because I think what you've described is very true, but I think we're looking at two different people. Like one, I feel like if you look at Tan, I feel like he has personally crossed the threshold. He isn't now just in the crossing like when we discussed with Elliot Hill. So to take a job that is almost a poison chalice, to have the audacity to step into Trump's office with a determination to be able to take that on, knowing all of the pain, all of the reputational damage that you could take doing that, having the moral clarity, the central truth, the knowledge of who you are and what you stand for, and to be able to do that, I think is massive. I mean, we often talk about, do you have to give up something precious to be able to cross a threshold or not, or be able to put something precious at risk to be able to do that, and to take the stand that he took, I thought was hugely significant of a person that has moved through and is now willing to stand on the other side, no matter what the pain. With Elliot, I think the fact that he was willing to speak truth, not just be performative about confidence. I think it's not just about projecting confidence, it's about speaking from truth. That to me was the big difference. But I guess the question for me when I look at him is, as you were saying, is it really enough just to say, I hear you, I see you, I feel you, I'm not just empathetic, I'm naming what we're all discussing. If the financial and performance and sort of purpose narratives aren't lining up, if people aren't seeing the sacrifice that goes with it. So when Tan took out all of those layers, it wasn't just a pure efficiency drive. It was about getting more agile, more lean. This is not a big engineering culture anymore. This is about getting leaders closer to the technical delivery. This is about shifting us into the areas that really matter. And that's where they're forcing the crossing. He's like saying the old identity is gone. We are not this company anymore. And it's not just a statement. It is backed up by actual reality that people can touch and feel.
Yeah.
And that to me is the most interesting thing in that, you find the commonalities, but for me, I actually think there are very two different stages in this threshold journey.
Yeah. I mean, and I've seen something, Andy, in these two that I haven't seen before. And it's what you described with Tan, is that he was already over the threshold.
Yeah.
So in our thinking, we've always kind of positioned it as you're moving from the old to the new.
Yeah.
But there's something about somebody who's already across. They've already experienced how a different world works.
Yeah.
And they've got the confidence to go back and say, I can do this again. And I can take another group, another organization across here. And to me, there's a confidence in that. I think there's also a humility that I'm not going to grab hold of my success, right? My success was in service of something.
Yes.
And I've got the inner confidence to go back and do it again. And now, I think there is a tendency to put too much weight on individuals in leadership, and people, it was about the individual when they succeeded and it was about the environment when they failed, because it's a different environment. He might not do it again, but I would love to know what motivates him and love to know what drives him, because there's a humility in there, I think, and it's a wonderful example of when you've crossed. Are you willing to be in service of going back and bringing others across? So that perception in your friend, don't do this, it's stupid, you're going to put yourself at risk. Why would you leave this place you've got to?
Yes.
He's clearly in service of something more important than his own reputation, or short-term, and certain type of reputation.
And it's interesting you say that as well, because the market reaction to Intel, apart from prior narrative of Intel is easy not to like at the moment, was that they started using language like there's an earned humility about Intel at the moment. This sort of the prior arrogance of we are the number one manufacturer in the world, and everyone will comply with our architecture and our our standards, etc., etc. Actually, now it feels like this is an organization that is reflecting Tan's humility. Like you can see that humility manifesting into the organization. So you're right. Although it is not about the leader, it is also, we often talk about the need for the tone at the top in terms of how to get set. And if you are not role modeling that narrative, if you are not showing that shift, you will not see that in your culture. And again, I think we're seeing Tan manifesting that, and in a way that I don't know yet if what we will see with Elliot Hill. I think it's far too early. I mean, I think he's in a process where the prior CEO had almost severed Nike from its identity. It tried to take it away from being a sports brand into more of a luxury play, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think he's going back to, how do I reconnect the organization back to who it truly is? And that is a longer and more painful journey than being at the top of an organization where you have found purpose and you have found alignment.
Yeah. So I suppose in all of that, there's different journeys which have different timescales to them.
Yes.
And the risk is, in going back, the world's moved on.
Yes.
So you're going back, but actually, it's not about just simply recreating how things were. You've now got to think about what that market is, and therefore there is another threshold that you have to cross. You have to cross into something. You're not just going back to something. So again, leader has to go back.
Yeah.
Right. And then has to go forward again. And so what these stories pick up is actually some really interesting dynamics. We're going to have to redo some of our models, I think, that we're going to use to try and communicate this, because they've had a certain linearity to we've got the messiness in it, but there's been a left to right kind of movement. And actually, that while that might still be true, there is these countercurrents taking place that we're seeing as well. Interesting.
Yeah, and there's also, I think we also need to challenge ourselves a little bit about sort of hindsight. So Tan also entered an era where agentic AI was starting to happen, and suddenly that's flipped the demand from GPU style chips, which were very much about how do you train models, into inference chips, which is very much CPU, it's back into CPU land. So we also arrived at a crest where Intel's moment was happening. And I don't mean that to undermine anything that he's done, but it's also a question of, sometimes we look at success stories and almost see it as the leader turned up and totally changed the environment, the context and everything, whilst also, as we say in the book, actually a lot of it is about the moment, the externalities that are on top of you, and do you ride those waves, and do you lean into those opportunities as much as it is about your ability to, as Elliot so beautifully did, to name the threshold we're at, to create the confidence, to remind people that there is a better future and that this is possible. Also, those market conditions have a significant impact, and sometimes we can tell stories of how it all came beautifully together that actually perhaps aren't as authentic as perhaps we might think they are.
Yeah.
So I think there's also another thing about, to your point, not trying to over rotate completely on the leader. Like this is a much more complex story than perhaps we could explore within this one podcast.
Yeah, and so there's the whole thing of the executive team. There's the whole thing of the wider organization. And one of the things we're doing in our consulting work is trying to speed up that process.
Mm.
I think in helping clients get to the point where they realize they're at a threshold. There can be many symptoms in an organization: increased conflict, lower levels of performance, problems with shareholders, etc., etc. But we know these things can swirl, they can go round and round.
Yeah.
And what we want to do is to bring an urgency to that, a clarity to that.
Yeah.
And that isn't just about doing a explicit diagnostic, because
Yeah.
we know we've both got examples of working with clients where, you know, one consultancy comes in and diagnoses, and another comes in and diagnoses, and another comes in and diagnoses.
Yeah.
And there's elements of truth in all three. But the problem was the people. It's how quickly can you get the people to the point where they realize the status quo isn't working. We have to change. And that's what our new diagnostic tool is aimed to do. We've prototyped it with a couple of organizations. We've made it more explicit. I've been so pleased that we've actually got the deck now. That look, I mean, it's taken the work that we were doing and made it explicit.
Yeah.
Thanks to you in helping me do that. And it's been a great play between our two skills, I think. And it's come through, like, not through top down, right? It's come through work we've done with clients, what we've seen happen. Now we think we can speed it up. We can make it happen quicker. And we know the quicker you get to the threshold, the quicker you get to the point where you realize the status quo isn't working. There is another future out there. We've got to let go of some stuff. We've got to change the way we lead. We've got to change our priorities, our focus, our investments. We might not have all the answers. We might not know what the path is, but there's a different energy about us. And that's really, I think, what these two stories show implicitly, that we are trying to make explicit. And we're trying to make it repeatable, and to an extent, there's a formula about it.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I really do. I think the fact that what we try to do, I think, in the consulting work and this sort of this diagnostic is not just help people name the threshold, but as you're saying, acknowledging that you won't have all the answers, that it is messy. But the faster that you can start to not just name the threshold you're at, but start to understand some of those threads, it's like a wicked problem. The more that you can start to segment into it and understand how that is manifesting. And, and we always use those questions like, what are the things you keep circling on but not resolving? What are the things that you know you need to discuss and don't? And where do you need more unity? As you start to explore these types of questions, it moves the threshold awareness from being, we know there's something here, into something that's really quite tangible, and you can start to then act on what might sound like slightly theoretical or conceptual. Very quickly gets you into all the things that you've said, and it isn't just about your investments and your priorities. It's also about reconfiguring how that team works together. It's the very DNA of that team. And when that team shifts, and the thing that got me was like when we were working the other day with in January with that leadership team that will remain nameless, just how fast. We're not talking weeks, months, years. We're talking in a room. Like that team left different 2 days later than, and it was literally by the power of these simple questions, forcing people to confront into the reality of it. And it's, so to say, it's not a diagnostic in the rational sense about how many layers you need to take out and which organizational units to close or to open. It's a diagnostic that gets to the heart of how you lead, how you operate, and it makes it so practical, so fast for you to then have a disproportionate effect on your leadership, your team, and your organization. And that's what, I mean, I've spent 20 years trying to help change organizations, and together I feel like we're changing teams in days, not in years, which is what I find so exciting about this threshold work.
And we know bits of the recipe. I don't think we know all the recipe. We know
Yeah.
we've got to get them out of their status quo. We've got to get
Yeah.
them out of their office. Ideally, we need to be in nature. There's something about that that really, really helps. We need devices away. We need a ruthless honesty from the top. Like, where are we? What's not working? Why are we here? We also need some compassion. We need some esprit de corps, right? We then need to get the issues on the table, right?
Yeah.
We need to name the things that are problems that are not working. We need to name the behaviors. And we've got methodologies for doing that. We constellate. We kind of get people on their feet. It's not talky. We get them into what we call the somatic or the embodied or the emotional. And it cannot be ignored. We also lay out a piece of rope, right? We put right down the middle of the room, like you are at a point where the status quo is no longer working. And for me, what's interesting is a couple of things. What is the gift that sits on the other side?
Yeah.
And what are the things that are going to accelerate us to get there? And then how do we start to see some movement? I also know I did that 2-day one with you. I did another one, which only lasted a day, and we didn't have enough time. I think this is a minimum of 2 days. There's something about the first day being really difficult.
Yeah.
We're getting stuff out. We need to have a good dinner together. We're not going to talk about it again. We're going to go in, sleep on it. We're going to come back. There's something about that overnight which helps. And you need that second day. You don't want people clock watching, back on planes. I've got to leave at 1 o'clock. There's got to be a commitment. We're going to stay till 4 or 5 and we're going to get through something. What also helps is going for walks. There's something about walking and talking as a methodology. It can be healing. It can bring people together. I don't fully understand why it works better than sat in a room, but it seems to. So, and we need data, and we need kind of complex decision making, and all of that stuff. The kind of the classic consulting stuff as well. So we're kind of creating the recipe book, I think. What needs to be in place, but as you say, 2 days, an awful lot can happen.
And the fun part is those 2 days, if this was a menu, this is only the starter. Then you get the main course and the dessert, right? So it's the big, again, you shift in the room, but then you have to go back out into the organization. And that's where the real work starts to happen, and I always liked your language. You can't outsource this work. This is not work you can just pass off to somebody else. You have to hold this and drive it. And I think that's where I'm most excited to start working with leadership teams more, is how do you help them now? And this is where your experience in the past from Oxford and your coaching and my consulting skills together, I think, are going to make the biggest difference, is when we help those teams start to connect into their N-1, N-2 and down. And how do we help them turn what becomes a moment of threshold crossing for them as a team into the very threshold crossing for the organization? How do you then magnify that impact? And I think that's when you start to get the performance narrative. That's when you start to see the impact that it has in the world.
Absolutely. So what are we concluding? It's not just about the technical, it's about the human. It's not just about coaching. Consulting brings a certain something. Coaching brings a certain something, but they cannot be separate. You can package these things together. We've done this. It's about the kind of the people and the what, and it's going to have data in there. It's also going to have ruthless human honesty in there. It's got to be in nature. So we've seen 2 organizations go through this, 2 great stories. And we know we can make this process clearer, more explicit, and therefore quicker, and have more impact on performance and impact.
Yeah. And again, as we saw with the bringing it back to Tan and Hill, is that, Tan didn't just name it, aware it, become, do the kind of the diagnostic. He crossed it, and he ruthlessly executed on the other side. He made that crossing real. He changed it so that the organization could never go back. And that's what the work that I'm excited to do with you, with all of with the clients that we have the privilege of serving, is helping them get through those, deliver those 2 days. But more importantly, as we saw from these two stories, success comes when you drive that through the organizational crossing.
Yeah. And super interesting about the, going back to go forwards.
Back and taking others. It's almost like a shepherding kind of like
It's like Sherpering type thing.
Sherpa, the post-threshold Sherpa is a really interesting.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend, and I think the baton is back now in my court.
Yeah.
To figure out the story.
Don't come with 3 though, because otherwise we won't have time. Otherwise, this will become an exponential game, and we'll never get through. 4 hours
we'll be
long.
back at 1.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye bye.